to register to vote is September 7th, the Wednesday. And then in November, we're having our big municipal election. That's citywide and city councilor at large, as well as all the districts. That's going to be November 8th, the election, and the deadline to register for that is October 19th. For your parents or other individuals who may not feel comfortable using technology or going online or using a computer to print out the forms, certainly they can call our office and we can send the form to them. Actually, in our office now, we've been making great strides in terms of recruiting and hiring staff who can speak different languages. And recently we just hired 2 Vietnamese American young men who can speak Vietnamese fluently. So if there's ever a need for someone to do interpretation over the phone, we have the staff in the office who can handle that. I speak Chinese, and we have other staff members who can speak Spanish, for example. And if we really can't find anyone in the office, well, we always try to find someone else in City Hall, another employee in a different department who can do the interpretation for us. And I know a lot of the organizations like Vatv and Vatv, for example, they also have registration forms available. If not, hopefully one of their staff members can make a call over to us, and then we'll gladly send over a whole box of registration forms.
So when you say return the form to you, the election commission department, the person has to physically mail those in, or they give it to the. The form.
I think the easiest, I think the easiest thing to do is just to put a stamp on it and just mail it to our office.
And sometimes that can be the hardest thing, I'll be honest.
Right, I understand. But if there's really a hardship, definitely give us a call and we'll do our best to accommodate maybe on our way home.
I mean, I was more concerned, like folks pick up the form at the library, for instance, and they fill it out and they just think that leave it the there.
Staff, exactly. Right. And actually, that is a problem sometimes that we encounter with some of the community organizations that they do their best and they try to do a registration drive, but then after the event's over, they have a whole bunch of forms, and a staff member or an intern gets assigned to bring this over to election department, and for whatever reason, it might just get dropped or just put to the side, and then before you know it, it's like, oh, the election's tomorrow, but oh my God, we didn't hand in all these forms. So that has happened in the past, and it's unfortunate, and it is a big responsibility, and that's why whenever people call us up and say, I want to do a registration drive, I always emphasize that, well, you need to be responsible for these forms, because if you don't turn them in on time, then indirectly you're disenfranchising the person. So we always try to keep the contact. So say if I give you 50 forms, I expect you to bring back 50 forms, even if they're all blank, just so that we know how many forms are going out, where they're going, what people are doing with them.
Yeah. Great. You mentioned that that you are Chinese, and you're kind of like helping the Chinese community also too with the election. How does the Chinese community feel about voting?
I think, I can't speak for everyone, but from my own personal experiences and just conversations with family and friends and community members, I think that over the years, with all the efforts that community organizations have done and activists, definitely the interest has spiked. And even if you look at the numbers for the Chinatown precincts, over the past 5 years, I would say the voter turnout has been amazing, just in terms of number of people coming out to vote, number of people going to the candidate forums, number of people asking good questions. So I think over the years, a lot of the Chinese Americans have realized that voting is very important, that if you want to help the community or you want elected officials to pay attention to your community and your needs, then you need to go out there and you need to vote. And actually the Vietnamese Americans have also been coming out in large numbers. I think proportionally the Vietnamese American population is not as big as the Chinese American population, so it's kind of comparing apples to oranges. But definitely people are coming out.
Sure. And in terms of the process, the being out there and the issues that you rally around and the process that getting people to excited about voting and participating in the process, I'm sure it can be shared across the different ethnic groups.
Exactly. So I don't think it's a Chinese thing or a Vietnamese American thing or Latino issue. So I think people for the most part want good jobs, good healthcare, good communities, public safety. So I think over the years, because of all the work that different activists and community organizations have done, including Vatv and Vatv, I think that more and more new Americans or historically underrepresented communities have been coming out, and they understand now how important it is to vote. But it's a continuous process. I think that you always have to remind people that, and you always have to try to engage people, and candidates have to go out there and really make themselves known, and you have to work with the ethnic media. So it's great that you're doing this program and that you're letting the Vietnamese American community know about the election and what the process is like.
I feel like sometimes people kind of share with me that they start to vote is because they want to believe in something, or maybe with the government policies they kind of see like there are changes that they don't like, or maybe they're like, you know what, I like this person, this candidate because he's helped my community a lot, so I'm going to go out and vote, things like that. So do you think voting is like the most important thing that citizens can use as a tool to change government or the government policies?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think it's such a simple act, but it's so powerful, because when you all go out in huge numbers, you're sending a strong message out to the politicians, the community, and the world that we care about our community, we care about these issues, and we're going to support the candidate who's going to fight for us and who's going to advocate for the issues and the things that we want.
That's great.
So it's so simple. It's free, it's easy. You just have to go out, maybe half an hour of your time, and just cast a ballot.
Yeah, I'm sure working as an election commissioner, you want people to vote.
Absolutely, all the time.
What are your thoughts about people who don't vote?
I totally understand it. I think it's just our modern day world. People are so busy, and it's not just young people or new Americans. People are busy. They have 2 or 3 jobs. They have family responsibilities, and it's hard for them to find 30 minutes of their time to go vote. But we do try to make it as easy as possible. So right now in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, if you're going to be out of town that day, or even say you live in Boston, but you technically work in Malden, and there's just no way that you can get back to Boston that day to vote. Technically, you're out of town. You can request for an absentee ballot. So if you send us an application a few days before the election, then we'll mail you the application, and you can just fill it out at home and mail it back to our election department, and your vote will be counted. So you actually don't have to show up in person to go vote. And that also applies to people with disabilities who might not be able to go to the poll that day to go vote. So we try to make it a little bit easier for people who might not have the time, or physically might not be able to get to the polls to go vote. Also, in the city of Boston, we have 254 precincts, and most of the precincts are right down the street for the most part from your home. So hopefully before work or after work, you can find 10 or 15 minutes to walk down to your precinct and vote. I think with some of the younger people, I think some of it is apathy, and some of it could be the lack of civic education in our high schools right now. So some organizations have been working around that issue, trying to bring civics back as a mandatory class. And I think it is important that young people understand how important it is to participate in the electoral process and to have a say in your government, because really these are the people representing you in your in your communities, right? So if you want to have good jobs, you want to have safe neighborhoods, you want to have services and programs, then you need to participate and let people know that I'm not going to support you, and you're not going to win the next election if you don't listen to my concerns and to my community.
Right. That's the beauty of our society in terms of having everyone's voices heard.
Yes,
through the and we can speak by participating in the voting process and the elections.
Yeah.
And I think it's a wonderful tool, and I can speak as a Vietnamese American who came to this country as a refugee. It is one of those rights that you have that
it's
so powerful.
Yes,
the privilege that you want to have.
Right? And I think a lot of Americans over the years have taken it for granted that they forgot how hard people, our ancestors had to fight for this privilege to vote and to elect someone to represent you.
Now, is at the commissions or the department, Do you guys have a specific sort of goal outcome that you look at after each election, a target that you look for in terms of, like, you know, how do you measure your work, the success of your work, and what are those?
Right. Every single election, we always wish for 100% turnout, but that's just not realistic. With some of the bigger elections, like presidential election, we know that it's going to be super crazy and everyone's excited and everyone wants to participate. So those we always try to plan for those in terms of putting more voting booths out there, recruiting more poll workers, doing more work with community organizations, getting people registered in advance, and also working with the different campaigns to make sure that everyone knows what he or she is allowed to do and not allowed to do that day. So there's no real goal. Always is 100%. We always hope for 100%. But the reality is that with some of the municipal elections, the slower ones, for example, this year, you know, sometimes turnout might just be 12, 13%. So historically, that's been the turnout for some of these slower elections. But hopefully with programs, TV shows like yours, you'll get more people interested and more people will come on, we can boost our numbers.
Yeah, it's quite tough. I'm not sure in the future they might have to do like the Census Bureau, knocking on everybody's door and be like,
I know. I heard in some places, other countries, that it's mandatory that you have to go vote.
Yeah.
So that's not how our government works right now. So
they're going to say, hey, I have the right not to vote.
Exactly. So hopefully with a contested race in District 3, that more people will be coming out and participating in this election.
How long have you been working as a commissioner?
3 years, but in the department 5 years.
Wow, seems to pretty much be so knowledgeable of everything.
What's the best part of your job?
Yeah, well, like what do you like about it? I'm sure it's just so bombarded.
Getting to go on shows like this. I really enjoy that community outreach and meeting different people. And I think also as a Chinese American, it's a great honor to be able to help some of these newer American communities learn about the process and get them registered to vote. I think sometimes they're a little bit scared of the process. They don't really understand how do you go about registering to vote. Will I get in trouble if I go vote? Some of these people are coming from countries where you're not allowed to go vote. You might get beaten or threatened. So it is such a privilege here, and I think culturally it's a big change for a lot of these communities. And you know, slowly but surely, I think we're making some progress. And so for me, it's been a great honor, and I've had lots of fun. Met a lot of great people. Even recruiting poll workers, it's so fun. I get to recruit my mom's friends, and then from one friend, I get more friends and more friends. And even through Vatv and Vatv, I've met a lot of great people, all the EDs and different staff there. So I love the job.
I can tell you that the information you provided today is very useful, powerful. It's a tool that, and hopefully that, you know, as we move closer to the election, we'd like to be able to invite you back for specific questions in terms of process, setting up places where we can get our young people out and the community members to participate. And thank you so much for coming on our show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Just a last question for you. What advice do you have for the Vietnamese American in the upcoming election? Any advice at all?
Definitely, if they're not registered to vote yet, they should register. Again, forms should be available at Vatv at Vatv, because I remember bringing boxes of forms down there. But if they don't have any forms, definitely give me a call in the election department, and I'll make sure that one of our staff members drives out there with a box of forms for the community members. So definitely register by September 7th for this upcoming preliminary election that's on September 27th. And then on September 27th, the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So make sure during that day, find 15 minutes to just go down to your precinct and vote. And then
so
for
the 7th would be the last day to register?
Exactly.
Okay.
So even if you're mailing in, just make sure that's postmarked by September 7th. As long as it's postmarked, then it's good. It'll get to our office and it'll give us enough time to update everything in the database and to print our voting list. And then for people who have moved, for example, also make sure that you fill out one of these forms and send it back to our office by September 7th.
So if you register for this process, do you still need to register for, like, say, the national elections, like the president?
No.
This is one process for
exactly. Well, unless if you don't vote in like 4 or 5 years, then we will send you letters to say, we're going to delete you from the voting list. Now, are you still there? Because if you don't respond to the annual listing and if you don't respond, which is the city census form, and you don't go vote, then